Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Like John introduced, I'm Abubukar Siddiq, Ango, a technical evangelism program manager at GitLab, and also part of the committee for organizing Commit. And basically, I'll be talking about getting your CFP as accepted for the commit, for the GitLab Commit event. Now, three things I will be sharing for everyone to take note of is first the CFP guidelines. Most times when submitting for talks, most people either miss some critical parts of the guidelines or very important details in the guidelines that might lead to getting accepted. More like it might be what we are looking for or some specific details that are required for submitting for some tracks. So the CFP guidelines is one of the key things that one needs to really pay attention to, read very well, understand before preparing a talk. And Emily will be sharing more about that. Now also, it's one of the things you have to first identify from, probably from the CFP guidelines, and thankfully part of what Emily will be sharing is either you'll be sharing GitLab stories, your postmortem after some things went wrong, your war stories, or maybe some successes that you've had when while using GitLab, or probably some thought leadership stories. Maybe you've been able to identify some case studies, use cases, or some other innovative ways of using GitLab or using GitLab to do things. Those can be something you will share also. Now, also live demos are most times leads to more credibility, and most presentations always wants to see live demos where you are able to showcase. It's not just you telling people, okay, this and this is what we've done, but you are able to demonstrate it, and it goes a long way in a CFP getting accepted. Now, at GitLab, in the technical evangelism at GitLab, one of the models that we use most times when we are writing CFPs to submit or looking at CFPs is the SCQA model, which stands for Situation, Complication, Question, and Answer. The first thing is the situation. Okay, what exactly do you want to talk about? What's the situation around it? Why is it something that's important? Then what complication is there that you are trying to make people understand and provide a solution for? Then why is that complication something we should worry about? That is where the question comes in. Okay, so thing is happening, but yeah, it's happening. What exactly is the reason why I should care about it, or why is it a problem for me? Then you will now provide an answer. Okay, since this is the problem and this is why it's important for you to know that it's a problem, then this is how you will solve it. So, and this will give the person reading your CFP an idea of, okay, exactly what you're talking about, the problem you're trying to solve, and the solution you are providing. Now, I'll be showing, this isn't like the best CFP, but this is just an example of a CFP that uses the SCQA model. First, here I'm talking about HashiCorp Vault basically, and how to use it with GitLab CI. So for my title, yeah, sometimes titles are one of the ways you can get someone to read your CFP. So it's being creative and how do I put it? Let me just say being creative with your titles can definitely get some eyeballs on your CFPs at first. Now, first I introduced exactly what I'm talking about, the situation. It's hard to keep secrets. Then I introduced the complication, how hard it is to keep secrets, before proceeding to the question of, okay, if it's hard to keep secrets, then how do we then make sure that secrets are safe before providing an answer with HashiCorp Vault? Saying, okay, HashiCorp Vault gives you this and that, and I will be doing a demonstration of how this thing can be used or can be done. So, some general tips, not specific to commit, but something that we at the technical evangelism team at GitLab usually take note of is first, everyone wants to see how a problem was solved. If you are having a problem, you identified a problem in Kubernetes and you were able to find a way around it, going straight to the solution sometimes isn't really exciting, but people want to see, okay, how did things go wrong? What are the steps you use to identify how things go wrong? And at the end of the day, how did you solve it? What are the results that you achieved from solving it? Maybe some increase in performance, or maybe some increase in SLA and so on. So production results are a very quick way to show that, okay, you know exactly what you're talking about and you've had the experience with what you're talking about. Then scope. Most people, when they are writing their CFPs or presenting, talk about things that are too broad. So it is very important to scope to a specific part of a topic. If probably what we want to talk about is too broad, you pick a section, you scope into that, then you go as comprehensive as possible on that particular part of a topic that you've chosen. Maybe you want to talk about Kubernetes. Kubernetes is now a huge ecosystem. Then you now decided to just talk about volumes. Then you go deep into talking about persistent volumes. So that way you'll be able to show a lot of content around it instead of having to talk about persistent volume claims, talk about a lot of things, just to give people context. Now, also, when you are submitting your CSPs, try as much as possible to gauge what kind of audience are you going to be speaking to and what is their technical capacity, so that you don't end up submitting a CFP to people who already have an idea or who already know what you're talking about, being a Captain Obvious. So it's better to already identify who exactly your audience is, their technical know-how, the thing, what they are expecting. Most times the CFP committee will already detail it in the CFP guidelines that, okay, this is the kind of audience and the kind of content we think the audience wants. That way you can add to collective knowledge instead of just stating the obvious things that people already know. And the whole thing becomes boring at the end of the day. Now, real technical details, especially when your audience will understand the details of the issues and challenges you've encountered, not to dumb it down into maybe it comes down to knowing your audience. If it's the people in your audience are CIOs, you know, definitely you don't necessarily have to go down deep into technical details. But if you are submitting to maybe cloud native enthusiasts at intermediate or advanced level, they won't get bored with the technical details. So part of identifying your audience, if you want to identify your audience, the technical details and challenges and everything, the dirty details of how things were done will always be exciting to the CFP committee and also the audience. Now, one very critical thing when you are submitting CFPs is to identify and know some of the people in the CFP committee, how they think, you know, especially like the commit event, everyone is a GitLabber. So we will think in terms of things around remotes, cloud native, GitLab, and so on. So identifying what the committee cares about and what they exactly they are looking for, it's extremely important. Now, here, like I mentioned previously, titles are very important. Some titles don't make it easy for one to understand exactly what the person wants to talk about, except you go into the details of the CFP. So try as much as possible to make your title very glaring, very concise, and should have the necessary keywords that would, at first look, one understands exactly what you want to talk about. So these are the few things I want to share. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'll gladly take them during the Q&A session. So over to you, John.
Awesome, thank you. And I really liked that presentation this time around. So I think for the folks who are attending, you got the better version of that talk from Abubakar. But before we move on to Emily, did anyone have any questions? Should we keep moving? All right, well, if you have questions and you don't feel comfortable verbalizing them, feel free to use the chat function. But if not, I'll hand it over to Emily to talk a little bit about the commit event and our tracks and things like that.
Thank you, John. And I'm dropping the link to the CFP in the chat channel, and I will share my screen to chat about the call for proposal itself and what the team is looking for. So if you haven't already seen it, our call for proposals link is a Google form, and we're constantly iterating based on the feedback that we're getting. So thank you to everyone who's provided some feedback. If you've already submitted, thank you. We are still pulling great content, so we want to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible. So a few key details. Our call for proposal closes next Friday, which is June 5th. The goal is we're getting pretty close to our cap for proposals, but we want to make sure everyone has a chance to get their ideas in. And we have 4 different types of sessions that you could submit for. We have kind of our lightning sessions at 15 minutes, a 30-minute talk, 45 minutes, and a panel discussion. So for anything besides the panel, we have a max of 2 speakers per submission. The goal being, our audience can really interact and engage with the content and not get too overwhelmed by the human kind of back and forth ping pong conversation. The panel, because hopefully it is much more discussion driven and less content like on the slides, it'll be a really engaging conversation. Max 3 panelists plus a moderator, so 4 total. So Abubakar mentioned some of our great tracks already, and you can read here. We have 7 tracks listed: GitLab how-tos, tips and tricks, leading transformation in the public sector, cloud native DevOps, DevSecOps, everyone can contribute, and remote but always connected. So I won't read the descriptions to you, but as John and Abubakar have mentioned, the CFP review committees will be very specific to each of these tracks. Each track will have its own team selecting, reviewing, and defining the agendas for their track. So for example, John is the track manager for Everyone Can Contribute. And so think about his expertise, his deep connection with the community. So as you're writing a proposal, if you're submitting for the Everyone Can Contribute track, be sure to think about laying it out in that SCQA format. What is the situation? Set the stage. What is the complication? Why is there a need for the solution that you are presenting? And then being able to share kind of the challenges that you had to overcome, the problem that was presented, will really help to level set and help your audience, not just the review committee, but also the people who are listening to your talk, have a connection with the content, right? We want people to get the best content possible and really understand some actionable takeaways. We're happy to chat through any proposal questions that you have. Commit at GitLab, come straight to me. So if you want to chat through ideas, if you want to, get some feedback on what track might be the best fit, I'm happy to help there. Oh, I didn't even know how to do this drawing thing. John, so cool. And this recording element is key because Commit is going to be virtual. We're actually going to be pre-recording with all of our speakers. So that way we'll have lots of time to practice to help our speakers feel really prepared and to get all that content as evergreen content. So here you can slide right on through the full CFP. We want to make sure you see all the questions that you need to prepare ahead of time. So I will just scroll on through. You can see the selections that you need to make. In terms of writing your abstract, again, keep in mind that SCQA format. It'll be really helpful in terms of helping the selection committee to understand why, the why, the how, and the who your talk will really connect with. Last time we had this meetup, someone asked about how long the abstract should be. While there's no minimum, but there is a character maximum, that's 900 characters, and that's just so we want to encourage you to be as concise as possible while answering those questions. Here you'll select which track or tracks you want to apply to. we strongly encourage, if you have any links to previous talks, or if you had a brainstorming session where you're talking through your idea, or if you want to record a brainstorming session with me, please do link it here. We want to hear from you. Part of Commit is getting to hear your personality, right? As part of everyone can contribute, remote but always connected, you know, the stories are great, but hearing from you, our community, is what really excites and inspires us. Sorry, there's some banging. And that's about it. Our track management teams will be getting together next week to start planning their review process before they jump into the review process. And the goal is we're going to start announcing some speakers in mid to late July. So with that, I will scroll back to the top. And I'd love to see if anyone has any questions, any ideas that you want to chat about, or any feedback about the CFP form itself.